that there are several statements made by Arjuna Mahendran, the Treasury Secretary, and also by Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is in charge of development. Arjuna Mahendran has been classified as international capitalist agent by many, and they all expected enrichment of the bourgeoisie by the proposals that could come from Arjuna Mahendran. But what is said in the last few weeks about the situation in Sri Lanka brings to memory the statements of various radical thinkers. He said that in Sri Lanka, poor people are taxed and rich are allowed to go free almost, and therefore the burden is on the poor people. It's a very serious situation. Unless this situation is changed and the weight of the budget to go on the shoulders of the rich people, capable people, then only there could be rational way out of the situation. He said many projects which are supported by foreign loans became unbearable because the projects could not bring any serious feedback and so that it can support the areas of the finances. The situation is such that they have to take drastic actions. So now the cry is that rich will be burdened with taxes, and therefore there will be hindrance to investment and attraction of investors. This kind of criticism was there even at the time of so-called leftists when they were in charge of the treasury and they were trying to do something on the line of the social democracy. Whatever it may be, Arjuna Mahendran has come out with the truth. This is one aspect of it. On the other hand, he has said the state sector, the state capitalist sector, where so many services have been taken on by the government. There are so many corporations handling services related to people. They are, but most of them are in debt and the money has to be pumped out by the treasury. They depend on treasury for the survival. That shows that they are inefficient, and whatever money they have collected, they give for various other activities, and political leaders are plundering these organizations, and they are taking money out of these corporations, and therefore it has become a menace. And instead of being capitalist in the form of with the ownership of government ownership, they have become plundering units for the political leaders. So thereby the advice is to change the management to efficient management which will not be subordinate to political pressure and will not succumb to the pressures from various spoiled political leaders to give money for their various activities. So now the proposals are going to based on this kind of thing. At the same time, Ranil Wickremesinghe has come out with this long statement analyzing various aspects of the economy and analyzing on the time of the Bandaranaike period. But unfortunately, his criticism of the Bandaranaike period is one-sided. He says that the socialist vision is responsible for the breakdown of the democratic thinking in the economic sphere. And he blames for various activities such as populist, welfarist thinking on the shoulders of socialism. But we have to say very clearly, during the Bandaranaike period after the coalition, the major role was played not by the Samasmajist or any other Marxist-oriented people, but by the populist Bandaranaike socialists. That's a different variety of thinking. It's a kind of liberalism based on popular welfare for the people. Such a system obviously cannot survive for a long time unless there is some dramatic change and responsibility is taken now to run the country and see that if it is in the capitalist market system, that money is given into the hand of the government for the expenses of the state and also for development. Without that, this welfarist attitude towards the society will create a problem there. Therefore, his criticism is correct insofar as the populist utopian thinking that was there, and also the corruption that accompanied the populism and the so-called socialism of Bandaranaike. But for example, he proposes in his document that cluster villages throughout the country, around 25,000 cluster villages, as an instrument for agrarian revolution, to bring about reform, radical reforms in the agrarian sector. The idea of important centers in the rural society with power and resources to direct the development is not a new one. It has been there even the time of Bandaranaike period, especially during the period of the coalition. The Marxist and the socialists within the coalition introduced the idea of political authority in the villages to direct the development of agriculture and animal husbandry and various other activities in the rural society. They came out with the political authority, idea of a political authority in each district, and under that to have village level committees, development committees where democratic discussion will take place, and they will be strengthened by the center and the ministries, and it will be democratic revolutionary centers in each district. But unfortunately, the system that they suggested was not implemented. Instead of that, political leaders interfered and they took the whole working into their hand, and arbitrary decisions were taken. And they, very often, the parliamentary politicians thought only about their vote and what benefit they will get in a certain project or certain activity. So on that basis, the whole thing became a corrupt system, and the attempt to have political authority in the rural areas as a development centers failed. So when present Prime Minister suggests a similar system for the development in the rural areas, we say unless there is democracy, where all parties and all ideas can be discussed and strong decisions are taken in each area to implement the policy, there will not be a success. If there are going to be a political authority in the same line as what we saw during the coalition government, where they take the command into their hand and the political command become an alienated entity from the assembly that have been called for and people who have been participating in the assembly. So this criticism we are making in order to see that same thing does not happen under Ranil Wickremesinghe's program.